Kick off with BUA Foods first quarter earnings with what was released to the NGX. Assets growing by 5%, 649 billion. Revenue 60% year-on-year growth, 144 billion naira there. Gross profit 100% climb, 56.6 billion naira. Profit before tax 85% growth, 46 billion. Profit after tax 40.4 billion naira, 77% year-on-year growth. Joining us to discuss further is engineer Ayodele Abioye, who's the managing director, CEO of BUA Foods. He is an experienced and multi-skilled business engineer with over 25 years experience in business operations, leadership and management, food manufacturing, project engineering, supply chain, and general management. He joined the BUA Group in 2021 as Chief Operating Officer for BUA Group's food business, served as Acting Managing Director of BUA Foods Plc from 2021 until August 2022 when he assumed the role of Substantive Managing Director. His previous roles include General Manager at 7up Bottling Company, Head Supply Chain at Gas Nigeria, Franchise Technical Director at Coca-Cola Nigeria, Regional Supply Chain Director with Nigerian Bottling Company Limited, and Chief Operating Officer of Secure ID Limited. What a CV. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to you. With BUA Foods, can you take us, actually, before I even get to the numbers, with numbers as impressive as that, would you say food is the business to be in Nigeria?
Obviously, yes. So if you look at it from a physiological need of the human being, we all need food to grow and, of course, to live. So food, as it were, there's continuous demand as long as population continues to grow. Today, the world population is over 8 billion thereabouts. Africa is about 1.4. Nigeria probably represents about 15% of that. If you bring that introspective into BUA Foods primarily, I'd like to start by saying that we had a business, food businesses, 5 of them, that dates back 3 decades. And of course, early last year, we debuted on the Nigerian exchange. Those food businesses did very well in the last 30 years before we debuted on the exchange. And what we did going to the exchange was basically to democratize our wealth creation journey, which of course brings in more public participation into this journey. And I think since we debuted, we've seen very good numbers, as you rightly said. Share price growth as at the end of last year was 65%. And year to date, we're already tracking 75%. In terms of market capitalization, we're already 2.04 trillion, as it were. And clearly shows that we're one of the top, or I would say the only food business that actually exists in the top 5 on the exchange, as it were. So it really shows that believability in the public of the brand is one, and also that we have a good proposition in terms of fulfilling demands, and also our North Star goal has been how we will fulfill or rather support the promotion of food security in Africa, of course, starting from home, Nigeria.
Of course, of course. So what about the triggers behind these numbers that we're seeing? Was it, is it volume selling more, or what? What's the triggers behind these revenue numbers?
Okay, so absolutely very correct. Notwithstanding all the issues that the business climate is to experience. So we've seen growth in terms of volume across all our aggregate products. Primarily, we are into different products from sugar, flour, pasta, and rice, of course, as it is now, and including edible oil. So we have aggregate volume growth at 25% on record, at least for quarter 1. And then also important is also to talk about the price mix combinations, which also was basically to balance the financial metrics and financial lines, as it were.
Now, as impressive as those revenue numbers were, we have to talk about your costs. And this is now going to flow into a conversation around cost of doing business. So we start with your cost. You're already excelling. Your cost of sales. I mean, 87.6 billion, a 42% climb. Then we go into some of the expenses as far as selling and distribution expenses, I believe. Yeah. Okay, no, operating expenses, so 8.9 billion, they're 300% rise. I think this went from about 700 and it's something million to over 8.9 billion. And then you've got selling and distribution expenses, they're 787% climb. I mean, that was a gargantuan jump. Your selling and distribution expense, and then your administrative expenses, you put it all together. That's 6.3, 2.6, and then you get your 8.9 billion. Okay. What were the drivers here? What led to this large increase in expenses?
Okay, excellent. We're a business that have a strategy on expansion, and this expansion strategy is basically, I would say, one of our it's core to our entire global strategy, as it were. And of course, as you do expand, you're expected to also accommodate costs, subsidiary costs that comes with expansions. So for instance, we're expanding our markets both locally and regionally. That will obviously come with some expenses in terms of you need additional people to join the business. You also need to enroll logistics partners, supply chain operations, so you need to pay for all of that. So if I speak specifically on the selling and distribution, it's a deliberate effort to actually support the expansion we are doing into the markets, both locally and sub-regional. And those costs actually are going to be there for a very long time to kind of, more like an investment, which of course we will harvest over the quarter, over the years, as it were. It tends to kind of fray down because of what one-time costs that you need to do. And also working with supply partners, you need to pay them. We're also supporting our expansion drive, as it were. So those costs are largely focused in that space, as it were. Of course, I did talk about general expenses. Of course, payroll and all of that. So you need people to work with you, both directly and indirect, and you need to pay for all of that. Of course, financial cost is also part of that element, which, again, adds on together to, by and large, I think what we have done basically is to also optimize our midline costs at a lower growth rate compared to our revenue, so that at least we have a very decent and superlative bottom line, as you have called out earlier.
I mean, it's impressive that as high as those costs were, you still came out with a healthy gross profit and a healthy operating profit. It just shows how well the sales were. Inflation, I have to ask you about impact of inflation. I mean, we see food inflation at 24 or something percent. What's the impact on your operations as far as inflationary pressures?
Okay, so reality is that inflation is a global issue, as we all know. Of course, Nigeria is not immune, neither is our business also immune to this. So we're facing it head on with all sort of business resilience that we could deploy on all fronts to manage inflation. So obviously, you see, we're seeing cost rising from the supply side, because as the global issues continue to extend, it's more or less what I call an entropical state, as it were. We continue to see costs of inputs, raw materials, energy, and all of that also skyrocketing as well. And of course, we're bringing down that into the impact on our distributions, secondary distribution, as it were, if you want to call it, as it affects the real consumers, as it were. So we keep managing all of this cost line, basically, because at the end of the day, it's our business resilience that makes us deliver on our numbers and, of course, where we are today.
But I mean, as a lot of other CEOs have said, doing business in Nigeria, I mean, they keep using the word resilience. So what does that suggest? That you have to be strong to do business here? Is that
the reality is that you get used to a situation, and once your body gets used to a situation, just like the medical doctors will tell you, that they give you a certain drug, your body tends to get used to it. It gets to a point where it doesn't matter anymore. Anything that comes, your body is ready for it. So that's more or less how business have been. Okay, let's not forget, business are also they're organic, as it were. So we also respond to the reality of today. We don't know what is coming before us tomorrow. Last year we started with the Russian-Ukraine war. Nobody expected it. This year we started. What did we didn't anticipate. We started with the cash issues, scarcity, of course, election, disruptions and all of that, all impacting business here and there. And of course, you always need to find a way to manage these headwinds.
You have to be nimble.
Absolutely.
Wow. I want to ask you about food supply shocks, because you earlier talked about the need for food security across Africa, but starting here at home in Nigeria. The central bank governor at the last MPC meeting mentioned 3 shocks. And okay, there it is on our screen. Increase in road transportation costs, security issues in food producing areas, legacy infrastructure challenge. And he was talking about the continued increase in food inflation, right? So as a player in the food segment, how do you navigate these challenges, considering, of course, the ultimate goal of trying to get Nigeria food sufficient?
Okay, so you're absolutely right, and I think the numbers, the data read out by the central bank was quite correct, because talking about the impacts of insecurity on the food chain, as it were, and also talking about the cost of road transportation, which is largely driven by also the cost of diesel, although we see that diesel prices are beginning to come down now, but notwithstanding, you still have other issues to contend with in terms of cost of fund and all of that. For us, again, the headwinds, like I did mention, are never ending. They are never stopping, and they're continuously there. And in terms of meeting managing the supply shocks, it's for us to continue to deploy our strategic initiative, as it were. So in terms of, say, for instance, the disruptions we have in insecurity, or maybe so you talk about the flood issues that impacts on transportations and all of that. What basically we've done is to use our strategic warehousing initiatives, which of course we deploy on a day-to-day basis to manage, to ensure that we have goods very close to our market. And of course our customers are also able to serve a very short lead time, as it were. And also for us, again, it's also around edging both our supply and our delivery chains on both sides, because we have very good supply partners as well as very good customer partnership, which kind of enables us to see our business through quarter on quarter. We're able to plan properly and also be prepared for whatever shocks that could come across.
You mentioned your partners and food supply chains and so on. Great point there, because I want to follow up on that. I would assume that most of your movement of goods is by road, yes?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay. Can you tell me what an integrated rail system would mean for your logistics and how it would improve things for delivery supply chains and your partners?
Sincerely, it's going to cut down costs, because we are bulk transports. We run a bulk transport system, as it were. An integrated rail system will obviously bring down costs in terms of transportation, as it were. However, I think what is very important to highlight is the fact that the infrastructures for rail systems needs to be fit for purpose, because now we're talking food. And when you talk food, you need to be wary of the importance of food safety.
Okay.
This is very important, because what you don't want is you want to avoid or mitigate spoilage. You want to avoid exposures. So they are depending on the nature of your food business. So for us, we are largely in the dry products, as it were, for now. And of course, for dry products, moisture is very important to control. You don't want to expose your goods to rain and also for unnecessary humidity, as it were, and all of that. Beyond that also is the fact that some products are produced to order, as you know. For instance, flour, they've got very short shelf lives. So more importantly to say is that, yes, costs will be abated, but very critical is the fact that we need to have design infrastructures that will meet the specific needs of transporting specific food items, as it were, whether it is long-term, short shelf life, long shelf life, as it is. But more important, you want to have food safety.
Excellent. So it's not just rail for the purpose of rail. It's got to specifically be fit for 12. Okay, great. So now that leads me to power and storage of food, because it's perishable, as you've just said now. So what about those costs in terms of the impact of power and how, I guess, of storage facilities, how that would help to preserve the food and how that has impacted you?
Okay, so for us, like I did mention earlier, our food products are primarily dry at this point in time. When you talk about the sugar, the flour, the pasta, the dry products. Okay, the edible oil, of course, is liquid, but notwithstanding, has its own characteristics, as it were. So it's dry product for us. They are not really directly perishable. What is only in terms of production system, what is critical is the flour. So the flour you make to order, because of its short shelf life. And of course, the nature of meat flour is basically for you to be able to avoid ingressions of microorganisms which you don't want, which you could lead to spoilage and all of that. So we do a lot of make to order in terms of flour, but in terms of other products, of course, we have designed warehouses that's able to accommodate those products without any issues of challenges, and at least making sure that we have that very closeness to our market and also to our customers in terms of meeting their needs at a short lead time.
I want to go back to your financials. Your assets grew by about, I think, 6%, right? Yeah. Okay. And I want to ask you about your plants, your machinery, and so on and so forth. I'm guessing these are imported. Is that right? Can we talk about that? Foreign exchange costs and the fact that we don't really manufacture these items here and what that has meant for your operations.
Okay, so obviously you're right. Asset grew by 6%. Obviously, also to the point you have mentioned, all machineries are imported, as it were, in this country today until we get to develop our large industrial manufacturing environment. And with that import situations, you need foreign exchange, obviously, to address these needs to your supply partners, the OEMs, as it were. And we're using available resources in terms of foreign exchange to also begin to, I wouldn't say it doesn't have impact, like all business do experiences. If I have limited forex today, I need to prioritize in terms of my expansion as well as in terms of my ongoing business. Do I want to put that in my raw material quickly or use it to buy my capital equipment and all of that? So we're doing a balancing across this space so that at least we keep the business going and also we are able to satisfy the objectives that we are set out to deliver.
Well, I mean, it shows in your numbers. Can I ask you what exchange rate you're using for? Is it the official rate or the parallel market? How are you balancing that out?
Okay, I think that's a straight one to answer. So, and you know what it is. So you just mentioned it. You've got the official and you have the parallel, as it were. So for us, it's a blend. It's a blend of everything. Of course, time value of money is also very important. Indeed. And then for us as a business that is largely import dependent as well, you need to do a lot of hedging. So an availability of funds and this FX particularly is very critical for us to be able to take the best of price so that at the end of the day you are able to pass minimal costs to your consumer. This is one very unique approach that we as a business we don't lose sleep over. We keep our eyes on it at all times. So it's a mix of everything from what we get from Central Bank of Nigeria. We believe they can do more. We also know they do prioritize manufacturing, as it were, and also whatever we can get from the I&E window or the parallel market, as it were.
There's so much to discuss. I want to ask you if you can talk about so many things with food. Smuggling, the borders, the impact of smuggling on your profit margins. Remember there was a big border closure, was it 2019 or so, or 2018 back then. There was everything, in fact, for that border closure, that's when food inflation started spiking. What has been, if at all, the impact of smuggling on your operation? Has it come down? What do you make of the border security, smuggled goods coming in and out, particularly for food? Does that affect you at all?
Okay, for us, I think it's a no. We're not affected, to be honest. When it comes to exporting locally or importing legally, we follow the rules of we're a very law-abiding business, as it were. And we also have the benefit of dispositions to actually export into West Africa sub-region, leveraging group assets, as it were. So we have no issue with that. Does not affect impact on it. However, on a global scale, on a general scale, it's important to highlight that border security, yes, you're right, is very important. And if I take a very specific example, you look at the amount of sugar that is imported both formally and informally. I would say through the borders now, formally and informally, those declared and those undeclared. I think the last statistics from FAO, FAOStat, as it were, says about 300,000 minimum was forecasted to be smuggled. 200,000 metric tons of sugar, is coming in as finished goods. If you translate that into labor, we're talking about close to 3,000 to 5,000 employments, as it were. So, and I think this is where the government, or rather the security of the border, as you did mention, is also very important to kind of stop some of these elements. And if you look at the issue of rice, for instance, which is also one key area we also play in. I think the government's intention is to keep the business, promoting local consumption, as it were. And of course, if we continue to allow the border to be porous, then we kind of dilute the impact and the efforts that we are trying to create internally in terms of creating jobs, growing what we eat, and all of that.
Okay, so creating jobs, growing what you eat. Yeah. What is wrong with this picture? Nigeria is abundantly blessed with food. You've got companies like BUA Foods that are showing impressive, we should have even gone into your full year 2022 numbers. That was impressive. You've continued Q1 2023, impressive numbers. So food companies like yourself are doing well. One of the top most capitalized companies on the NGX. Yeah. Stock is doing well. But yet, millions of Nigerians go to bed hungry. Some of them are not eating 3 square meals a day. We've got what's wrong with that picture?
Okay, so let me start first by saying, I think at this point I'd like to acknowledge the effort of our group chairman, Ayodele Abioye, who saw this long time and actually what you're talking about. And I think that's where he derived his passion to actually set up his food businesses. 5 of them, like I said, at the start, over three decades counting now, and of course before we debuted on the exchange. So we will continue to have gaps for food, demand for food as it were, because of population growth, as we said. Right? And of course, there's a need for us to continue to fulfill that. What has come, or rather, what is of importance in terms of why Nigerians still go hungry? So you look at it from different angles because there are a lot of contributing factors. One is affordability, ability to have that disposable income to buy food. But obviously, food becomes number one. If you have to choose between eating not to die and buying data, I'm sure you want to buy your food first. That's for sure. But again, I think one other important area that we need to look at is the food waste. So what did Statista says? It says that Nigeria has about 189 food waste per capita. It's about 189 kilogram. Wow. When you look at South Africa, I think it's about 40. Kenya is somewhere around 90 thereabout or 99. So you can see the gap. So it means also that we have food in abundance. It's probably not well scared, or probably along the value chain system, there are a lot of wastes that we need to cope. Because if you are able to have, just like you spoke earlier about preservations, spoilage, and all of that, if you're able to manage all of this across the entire value chain, we obviously should be able to preserve food and have more for other people to eat, which is very important. But again, let me bring you to BUA Foods space. We're a business that on year we increase our food support system to the community. We've grown that by about 700%, if I would say over 700%. I think we spent last year about 150 million. This is aside from what the global business is doing in terms of supporting our local community, providing food for people, as it were, as much as we can, across using our products, leveraging our products thereabout to feed the populace. So I think, like I did said, food waste curbing is very important. You look at the numbers, the amount of food that we are wasting as a country. It's important to see how we can nip that, bring that down to some reasonable levels, and then when you capture that, you can then, of course, turn it to something much useful for the benefit of the human.
Indeed. But tell us about your expansion plans. Is that outside Nigeria, across Africa? What are the plans?
Okay, so we have key expansion is, again, like I did said earlier, is at the core of our strategy. So, and when we talk expansions, we're doing it in 2 folds. One, it's on the platform. So we are investing ahead of demand in terms of our production capacity. So, for instance, our flour, it's just been completed. We've added additional capacity of about 147% thereabouts, bringing it to, adding an additional capacity of about 800,000 metric tons with existing, takes us to about over 1.3 million metric tons annually that we can actually mill in terms of delivering flour. Same thing with pasta. We're doubling capacity from 5 lines to 10 lines. Before the end of the year, that also will come on stream, and we're presently commercializing in that space, particularly on the flour, and that also impacted the number you see for Q1. We started our rice mill in Kano. We hope to ramp that up also before the end of the year. Again, rice depends a lot on local supply chain for paddy, and we are trying to play in that space very bigly. It's also our intention to build more rice plants because we believe there's the need for this product will continue to be there. As it stands today, Nigeria is underserving the demand. So we will obviously drive in that space. We're very proud to say also that we're the only listed business that is producing rice on the exchange today, as it were. Maybe others will join us tomorrow.
Yeah.
Also in that space, it's also to highlight our efforts in the backward integration program for sugar, which is part of the government-supervised projects through the National Sugar Development Council. Primarily, for us, we started the business. We started the process in the first phase last 10 years, in Kwara State, Lafiaji, after acquiring the Lafiaji Sugar Company, which is called Lasuko, as it were then. And we're developing 20,000 hectares of land, both in the agricultural estate as well as in the milling. We will be having a takeoff capacity to mill 10,000 metric tons of cane per day. This is actually the biggest in the industry amongst all the three operators, as it were. Because for us, it's a greenfield, it's taking time to harness, but we have gone more than 50% in terms of developmental phase, more than 50%, investing over $200 million, as it were.
Wow.
Of course, it's going to come with a lot of opportunities and benefits, employment, over 10,000 direct and indirect. It also has completed, I will say, but yet to kick off, is the 10,000 metric tons of ethanol plants, which is already installed in that facility, as it were. And coming in, bringing it fast forward into phase 2 now, it's our plan to see also how we accelerate that development and see how we can quickly get into real-time production, local production, which again will reduce our dependence on import raw sugar as well, as it were.
Great conversation, sir. Great, robust conversation on the food ecosystem. MD, CEO of BUA Foods Nigeria, Engineer Ayodele Abioye, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming to talk to us today.
Thank you very much.
You're watching.